That'd be good. Okay. Ashaychlan v'chutz potter. The Mishnah. The question is this statement going back to the Mishnah or not? But we're talking about the case of Tzulem Ukdashim. If an animal was hektish and then got a mum, and we say Ashaychlan v'chutz potter, and that should make sense because it has a mum, right? And anything that has a mum cannot be brought as a carbon. So if the rule is anything that can't be brought as a carbon, you're not going to be chayav for shechting it outside. It's either or. But Rav Huna's masni chayav, he says no. We'll be masna chayav, whether it's in the brisa or it's in the Mishnah. Either way, it's the same idea. He says that hashechtem uchutz chayav. The question is, how could you be chayav? Hooray! It has a mum, and if it has a mum, you can't be chayav for outside. Umukim law, and he establishes the Mishnah or the brisa. He says that the case where you shecht it outside and you're chayav is bedukin shiba'ayin. The case is that the mum that this animal has that we're talking about, it was hektish and then it got a mum. What type of mum? Bedukin shiba'ayin, a really small mum in the inside of the eye, of the eyelid. I think that's what it means. According to Rabbi Eliyahu, who holds that type of mum, if it actually is already on the mizbeach, so then you don't take it down. Heels the chatchil, you don't bring it with that type of mum. But if it is on the mizbeach, you don't take it down. And therefore, according to Rabbi Eliyahu, this type of mum, if you shecht it outside, you will be chayav because really, it can't be brought as a carbon on the mizbeach inside, and therefore it's shchutei chutz, it's kachim that you shecht it outside. Okay, ben lifnei pidyoinoi, ben la'achar pidyoinoi oiset mura. The brisa we read yesterday said that whether by psulam mikdashim before or after the pidyon, it does make tmura. The first, when the mum was koidem, it doesn't have a level of kedusha to even make tmura. But when the mum is after it was already hektish, then the mum came around. Then even after the pidyon, before the pidyon, if you say, I want the kedusha to be transferred from animal A to animal B, so then it v'hoyahus murasayeh kodesh. So Amar Nachman Amar Rabba Bar Avuha Usmurasay la'achar pidyon mesa. It says after you do the pidyon, if the tmura that's done after the pidyon of the animal mesa, the animal dies. There's nothing you can do to fix it. Why? My time on. Similarly to what we saw yesterday, what you do likreve, if you want to bring it as a carbon itself, kedusha dechuya ka'asya. You can't bring it because it's coming from its source of kedusha is an animal that was pushed off from being a carbon. Its mother, its source, right? The first animal is an animal that had a mum and it was nifta. Had a mum, it was nifta, and then you make kedusha onto it also, right? So.
Source can't be more than the source.
Can't be more than its source.
Since the mother can't be broad, the mother low, then this can't.
This can't be because the amount of kedusha that it has is so shvach. It's so little because it's so weak because all it has is from an animal that had a mum and it was nifta. So how much kedusha is there? There's an isser to be goyzes, to be ovid. You're allowed to eat it, right? It's barely hektish. So therefore,
just the head of an animal, the whole thing becomes kosher.
Right.
It spreads. So why don't you say?
Saying if there's a little element of kedusha,
that it should.
I'm not sure. I hear the question. Meaning over there, it's like when we say when you makdish in Eva that the sham is tluyuba, right? So you really meant the entire animal. There is a shita not like that. A shita that holds even if you're makdish any part of the animal, it's still the kedusha spreads.
We don't know what the first question is coming.
I don't know exactly how it works, but you could say that when the leg is full kedusha, it's shaykh the full kedusha over there. So the animal avad is shaykh the full kedusha, and so it So when you makdish the leg fully, so then it spreads to the rest of the animal. Over here, you can't makdish any part of the leg fully because you're not stopping makdish. You bring it from Tmura.
You're limited by the source.
Right. So therefore, it cannot be brought. I'm not sure if it's also saying because it's kedusha dechuya, therefore it doesn't have the amount of kedusha. It could be you're not allowed to. It's like not because its source was a balmum, so it's like a bizayin. This was nidche. This story over here is a sad story. It was nidche. It became a mum. It was nifte. So like what, you're gonna bring this in this beach?
Damaged.
It's damaged, right? Okay. So you can't bring it as a carbon. Okay, it says the Gemara lifrika, but still you should be paid. This says the Gemara no. Again, the amount of kedusha in there is so small that it's not tangible enough to be able to be paid it, and for that kedusha to be grabbed onto the other thing you want to be paid it on. You have the animal, you want to be paid it onto money, or you want to be paid it onto another animal. You can't even do that because in order to be chal on another animal, it has to be something tangible. Over here, there's barely any tangible kedusha. Therefore, what do you may say? You must die. There's nothing else you can do with it. Right. So its source is better. Its source is better because once it has a mum, you're allowed to be paid it. This you can't even be paid it. So Masim Rav Amram. So Rav Amram asks. Once it has a mum, let it be eaten labailim even without being paided. I understand you can't be paided, but why don't you eat it? Why can't the bailim eat it even before pedia? Says the Gemara, and where do we see precedent that when you have a tmura, even without being paided, you're allowed to eat it? By the tmura of the bukhar and ma'aser, apparently this din is true. It's none. Tmuras Bechoru Meiser Hein Uvladon Vladon Atzof Kol Oilam Harein Ki Bechoru Meiser. The Tmura and all the subsequent kids of the Tmura, they have a kedusha of Bechor and Meiser. The Yechol B'mum and the Bailam, and since a Bechor and Meiser, when they get a mum, they're chulin. Right, they belong to the Kayan, right? But the Meiser belongs to the Israel even, right? But because it has a mum, the mumminess belongs to, let's say, Bechar. The mumminess belongs to the Kayan. So Yisrael is allowed to eat it. So that's why by a tmura of a Bechar, you don't even have to be paid it because the mumminess belongs to a Yisrael. Then once it has a mum, now there's no kedusha left anymore. All there is chulin, so you're allowed to eat it. So says Gemara, maybe it should be the same thing. That tmura of Sulam Mikdashin should also be the same thing. That even though you're not part of it, you should eat it. So Abaye says like this: Zeshem imay olav, v'zeshem imay olav. Each case over here has the name of its source, right? Zeshem imay yamal. One is called Tmuras Bechar, and one is called Tmuras Sulam Mikdashin. Ze kulay Tmuras Bechar u'Meiser Mikriya. This one is fully called a Tmura Bechar Meiser. Bechar Meiser b'mumun misachlon l'baylim. Just like the reason why it works over here is because it's exactly a duplicate of its mother source, right? So Zeh Shem Imayam Zeh Shem Imayam Zeh Kulei Tmuras Bechar Meiser Mikriya. It's called a full replacement of Bechar Meiser. Bechar Meiser b'mumun misachlon, just like its mother source. With a mum, it's eaten, like we just explained. Af tmuras on misachla, so to the tmura will have the same exact thing as its mother. But zeshem imay olav, but you can't say the same thing by the case of Sulam Mikdashin. Why? Because zeshem imay olav, it has its name is its mother source. What's its mother source? Tmuras kachim mikriya. It's called tmura of kachim. Ma kachim loy mischli el b'pidyon. Just like kachim can't be eaten only b'pidyon. Af tmuras and now we lo mischli el b'pidyon. Right, so you're saying you can't compare Bechor Meiser to Sulam Mikdashin. Why? Because Bechor Meiser, if you have Bechor Meiser, you don't. Right, if you have a Tmura, so the halacha is always going to reflect what its source is. By its source, if it has a mum, you could eat it. right? But over here, this is called Tmuras Kachim. Tmuras Kachim always needs pidyon, so Tmuras Kachim also needs pidyon. And over here, it's the Gemara that we already said, the amount of kedusha is not strong enough lemitvas pidyona to grab onto what you want to be paid to, because the kedusha is not tangible. Okay. How do you know that if you have tmura of a psul mikdashim that it has to die? There's nothing else to do. Tam limar ima'alei hagera tameh. Basically, one of the psukim in Parsha Shemini that discuss the famous tmeis, it says these are the animals that are maligera and are mafris parsha that you shouldn't eat anyway. And the pasuk goes on to discuss the animals that only have one simon tire, like shafan and gamal and chazir, right? But the Gemara understands it as a drasha that it's talking about there are sometimes kosher animals that are maligera that you're not allowed to eat. And what are the animals? And this is going to be one of the animals. And even though it's a kosher species, but even though it's maligera, right, it's still also because it's tmura of psula mikdashim. Right, so it's minayin l'tmura psula mikdashim shemesa tam lo maligera tameh hulochem. That's the pasuk. It's tameh hulochem. Says the Gemara, you can't use this pasuk to tell you that tmura psula mikdashim is aser, has to be killed. We need it for the case of 5 chatois, the 5 chatois that are mentioned in the Mishnah Tmura, which are mesa. So you need it for something else.
What, the maligera?
Yeah, you need the maligera to teach you that those 5 animals.
That pasuk refers to something which has to die. So we want to say maybe it's the Tmura. No, maybe it's from the 5 chatos.
Maybe it's right. We know. So apparently we know that it comes to the 5 chatos hamesais. There are 5 types of chatos which you can't. Oh, they want to say that. Huh?
I didn't see it.
You remember from Tmura, huh? Yeah.
In our journey.
Right, in Zvachim, right? So the Gemara says, before we get to that, the Gemara says, That's we know that from the other clause in that same pasuk, that even if it's mafris parsa, it's still stami. So we learn another thing. We learn chamash chatos mesis, and we learn other things also. Tani nam yochi. You see, you learn that from the mafrisei parsa tameh. Says, asks the Gemara, what do you mean chamesh chatos mesis hilchas gmiri lo talacha meish misinai? Says the Gemara, elak yasakra l'tmuras asham. It's coming not for tmuras chatas. It's more tmuras asham. That a tmuras asham is also mesa. Basically, the idea is that by tmuras chatas, one of the chatos amesas also is tmuras chatas. Because the chatas is not brought as a nedava, something that's brought as a nedava, so its oil can be brought as a carbon. The chatas, you can't be noidiv, you can't volunteer to give a chatas. You have to actually have sinned in order to bring a chatas. So to asham, according to at least these tanoim. So therefore, also tmuras asham can't be brought. Either way, the Gemara says, fine. Yasser called tmuras asham. Says the Gemara tmuras asham na milchas. It's also alach mishmi sinai. As we learn, kol shebechatos mesa, anything that in a chatos it would have to die, like a tmuras chatos, like that's the one of the chatos hamesas. The asham roya by asham, you don't have to kill it, but you can't be brought as a carbon. You have to let it graze and then get a mum and then be paided. But either way, it's puzzle. You can't bring it as a carbon. So the Gemara says that's also alach l'meish misinai. So why do you need the pasuk for that either? So the Gemara elalayim chamesh chatos mesas. Must be we still need it for the pasuk for the chamesh chatos mesas. We need both. The pasuk v'itzrich hilchas we need alach l'meish misinai. Afritzei apart is the pasuk that we need, and in addition to the alach l'meish misinai, the imikrav just from the pasuk I would think not that you have to kill the animal. It's just tameh. Not that you have to let it die. It's actually just tameh, and you can't bring it as a carbon. Kamash mal hilchasa, that's lemisa. Comes alach l'meish misinai and tells you mamish have to let it die. V'im hilchasa, and if you just have alach l'meish misinai, v'amina heicha de avar the ikri v'ochal. If you did, either way, if you did eat it, mehani chamesh chatos isura ika lav leka. If it's just halacha l'meish misinai, I would think if you were over and you did it, and you did it by mistake, so then it's an isur because halacha l'meish misinai says you shouldn't have done it, but it's not a lav. You don't get malchus. Therefore, kamash malan the ika lav. That's why we need a pasuk to tell you lo yisaychelu that it's a lav. Another approach is to tell you it's lakushi davar abomi maligera L'davar abo mimafrisei aparsa. The reason why the pasuk avada, all the dinim for chamesh chatos hamesos are learned from the halacha b'shmi Sinai. The reason why we need this is all to learn something regarding what we learn from Alegera. What do we learn from Alegera? What we said, our sugya, Tmuras Psulam Mikdashim. By Tmuras Psulam Mikdashim, we want to learn Dover Haba Mimalegera, Lid Dover Haba Mimafrisei Aparsa, Mal Alon B'Misa, just like by Mafrisei Aparsa. You have a halacha al Moshe Sinai that tells you what? That it should die, right? Chabei Chatos HaMesos, right? So now that we have a pasuk also, so now we're able to take that halacha Moshe Sinai and apply it also to Tmuras Psulam Mikdashim, because you have both psukim, and that's why you need the pasuk over here, because you have one pasuk Malagir, you have one pasuk Mafrisei Parsa. Mafrisei Parsa comes along with a halacha Moshe Sinai tradition that says it's talking about Chatos HaMesos that die, right? And because it's put in the same pool together as Malagera, so now you learn that whatever is learned from Malagera, i.e. Tmuras Mikdashim, also has the same din as Chamesh Chatos HaMesos. Mesa. Okay. Says the Mishnah. Weiter. Kabel Tzayin Barzel L'Oev B'Chav. Good morning. If you're Kabel Tzayin Barzel is a certain type of agreement that you have. We have this in Nashim and Mammon, right? You have that basically
Guarantees you return.
You guarantee your return. Let's say I give him 100 sheep. I give you 100 sheep, and they say you'll go work the sheep, and then we'll split the profits. Whatever, we'll split all the coming flocks that come out of these things. But let's say I give you $100 worth of sheep. Right? In 10 years, you have to pay me back $100. I don't care how much the sheep are worth. If they're worth more, if they're worth less, it doesn't make a difference. The agreement is instead of me just giving you the sheep to hold on to, and then after 10 years you'll give it back to me. No, right now we're evaluating the sheep to be worth a certain amount of money. You have to pay me back that exact amount of money. It's called, Rashi says it's called barzel because you could work it as like it's metal. You don't have to care about it anymore. The original Bailam doesn't care how much you work it, how much it depreciates in value, because the agreement is that at the end of 10 years you're going to give me the exact money back, the exact value. Okay, so I'm a kabel tzayin barzel and so let's say you have an agreement and you accept tzayin with a tzayin barzel, with a barzel agreement, you accept tzayin from him. So vladai tzayin pturim. So the vladais are potter from Bechar, because it sounds like right now, because it belongs to the guy. The actual tzayin belongs to the guy, right? So avada, its kids will be potter from Bechar. If it has a Bechar, it's potter.
Actually, it doesn't belong to the guy because you don't have to pay it them. It's yours. You have to thank God only the value.
He has like Rashi says he has like a lien on it. If you don't give him the money, he's going to go get the behemoth.
True.
So he has a shaykhus to the behemoth. For that reason,
That's enough of a shaykhus to
Right. So v'lo d'sein p'turim doesn't mean that the animal's b'chor itself is patur. That's pasha that the animal's b'chor itself is patur. V'lo d'sein p'turim means is even the next generation, the v'ladais. If the v'ladais have a b'chor, they're patur also, because like Rav said, the guy, if you don't pay up, then in 10 years he can come to the v'lados and say these are mine. So he has a lien on them. Since he has a lien on them, it's like he has ownership, and therefore that means that the second generation already, if that has a b'chor, it's patur from b'chor.
If you use an animal as collateral for a loan, is it changed?
So it sounds like because you have an agreement with him and he can actually claim it, so then he has part ownership already, and therefore even the animals that will go to the Jew, right? Let's say they'll split the flock, right? But the animals that will go to the Jew, they're still patur from b'chora because the guy has ownership in it, has a lien on it. However, v'lodei seyin are chayav. The next generation, right? Then they are chayav. The grandchildren are chayav if they have a b'chor. If they made a specific agreement and the Jew said, he told the guy that these v'lados you can take, if he specifically mentioned that if I don't have the mother to give back to you, so then you can take the kids, right? So then he sort of extends it another generation. So if he said that the first generation are equal to the mothers, that means that we have now another generation. So then v'ladais are pturin, uvlade are chayav. So we have to go one more generation, and only the next generation is chayav. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Omer, no, afilu ad asara dairis pturim, even 10 generations are pater, because always he holds that the guy can always come and take it, and therefore you're going to be pater forever. Rachel sheyaldim in eiz. If you have a Rachel and an eiz, either both chayv and bechora, but the Rachel sheyaldim in eiz, the eiz sheyaldim in Rachel. This is a whole new case. This is no shaykhs to the previous case. Pure na bechora because it has to be nidma. We said the mother and kid have to be equal, look the same. The im yesh by mikzas simonim, but if it has a little bit simonim like the mother, then you're chayav. Okay, the Mishnah said that in Kabbalah saying Barzel, the kids are for sure Patim Bechora. Even the next level's kids are Patim Bechora. The next level, Vlodei, they're going to be Chayiv and Bechora. So says the Gemara Lememra, do we mean to say the Kevan Deloinokat Mora Zuzi, since the original Bailim did not take the money, right? The guy that he got the sign from, he didn't pay him for it yet, right? So since he didn't pay for him yet, therefore Bershusei Demora Kaima, these sign, the first sheep that you took are Bershusei Demora. They really belong. Who do they belong to? They're in possession of the original Mora, the original master, and that's the guy, right? And therefore, because of the original master, therefore the kids are Bukhar, and the Bukharis are Bukharis of a guy, so therefore you're Pater. So Urmini asks the Gemara on this assumption that by Nichsei Tzayin Barzel it belongs to the original person. Why? Because there's a din that says Ein Mekabel and Tzayin Barzel Mi Yisrael Mipnei Sherubis. You can't do a Tzayin Barzel agreement from a Jew because it's Rubis. Why? Because if I accept from you $100 worth of sheep, let's say, right, with an agreement that in 10 years I'm going to pay you back $100, because Tzayin Barzel is not going to pay back the actual things. The agreement is I pay you. Doesn't make a difference if it depreciates, if it's not there at all. Doesn't make a difference. I have to pay you back the $100, which, in a sense, is that I'm giving you I'm getting a free loan. It's not a free loan. I'm getting a loan of $100 for 10 years, right? That's what I'm doing, because in 10 years, when our agreement's up, I'm going to have to give you back a certain amount of money, $100, right? That's the value of the sheep that I get now. So, no, that's not interest, but the interest is that over the 10 years, I'm getting all the vlados. We're splitting the vlados. That's the agreement over here. So it looks like there's a loan for 10 years.
I'm loaning you the money, I'm getting half the float for the 10 years.
Right, and that's schar for the loan. It's not a free loan. I'm paying you for the loan. I'm paying you the sheep for the loan. Right, so now we have a case of ribbons. Who? That's right. I'm taking care of it. I'm getting it.
That's why you're getting the vlados. It's not like you're getting vlados for the loan. You're getting it for the money.
No, I'm giving you vlados. Let's say you give me $100 worth of sheep.
Right, but I'm carrying it for it. I'm caring for those sheep.
Oh no, you're not. You're out of the picture. I'm the one caring for it. You gave me the sheep.
I gave you the sheep, and you're caring for them.
I'm caring for them. I'm taking care of it.
That's why you're getting half the vlados.
Yeah, but I'm giving you half the vlados too. So in 10 years, I'm going to give you back the $100 that we originally made up, plus over the 10-year period, I'm giving you vlados. So that's like a loan plus interest, right? But you see from here that this could only be true, right, if it's a loan, which means it belongs to. It doesn't belong to you if it belongs to me. Right? If it still belongs to you, then there's no ribbis over here. There's no loan. It's just an agreement that I'll pay you back $100 at the end. Right? It's just an agreement for in 10 years. If it depreciates in value, I'll pay you back. Right? But if it still belongs to you, right? So then it's not ribbis. It's not a loan at all. Right? It's only a loan if it belongs to me, and now I owe you money. You gave me the sheep, and now there's an outstanding loan of $100 in 10 years. Right? Because you gave it to me, there's an outstanding loan, and I'm paying you $100 extra. Plus more, that's ribbis, right? But if it still belongs to you, right? Like we're saying in our Mishnah that the tzayin still belongs to the guy, and therefore it's part from bechora. What do you mean? If it still belongs to the other guy, why is it ribbis? It's not ribbis. There's no loan involved. There just happens to be an agreement that if it depreciates in value in 10 years, I'll pay you back. Right? So that's the Gemara's question. Raminu ein mekabel tzay brazim Yisrael b'leishu ribis alma. You see from here that Bershus of the mekabel kaim. It's in the Rishus of the mekabel, and therefore there's an outstanding loan. Abaye says leikashia ha the kobula leunsu v'zoyla. In the case where it's considered in the Rishus of the mekabel, and therefore it's a problem of ribis, is when the original bailem no, it's when
In our case,
in our case, right? In our case,
he's assuming the risk. So then,
the guy is assuming the risk. That if he's saying that if something happens to the sheep, it's on me, it's fine. Or zul oinsa, right? Oinsa, if an oinus happens, then it's fine, it's on me. Or zoila, if it depreciates in value, it's on me. Right? So
You're getting it back.
that's the Gemara's kasha. The Gemara says, "What are you talking about?" Right? So Abraya proposes that the case over here is that the guy is makabel achrayis, right? And therefore, only in this situation is it still in the guy's possession. But in a regular case of Tain Barzel, avada goes to the makabel, to the one who's to the guy. Therefore, to Abyss. So Rava, he says the kabel like unsa v'zayla. If the guy was makabel unsa v'zayla, Tain Barzel karisli. The whole idea of Tain Barzel is that he's not makabel the depreciation in value. You have to pay me back for the depreciation. But my Pasco. Also, why did the Brisa make a blanket statement, right? That the Mishnah. Why did the Mishnah make a blanket statement? Oh, Tain Barzel, it's pater. No, it's not. It's not. It's only a specific case of Tain Barzel. The oid, and so too the case by us. The case of the Brisa that Ein Mikabel Tain Barzel Yisrael. Adetani Seifa. Why before the Seifa says? The Seifa says Aval Mikabel Tain Barzel Min Ovid Kecham. You're allowed to do it with an Ovid Kecham. Why is it contrast from Yisrael to Ovid Kecham? There's a middle case where you should contrast it. Before changing to Ovid Kechavim, you should already make a differentiation within Yisrael, and you should say only in a case where you were not Mikabel Unto Vizayla. If it's a thing to be Mikabel Unto Vizayla and still called Tain Barzel, so then Shaper Dami, then you should be allowed to do it because it's not Ribis, right? Because it's Bershus, the original Bailam, right? So then why again he's saying he's not Mikabel this ukimta to say that it's talking about Ein Tzvizayla. Elam Rava says Idi v'Idi loy kabel Ein Tzvizayla. No, we're talking about regular Tain Barzel. No one was Makabel Ein Tzvizayla. That's the whole thing of Tain Barzel. Hacha gabe b'chayra. The reason why by b'chayra you're potter avada. The case of ribbits, the ribbits is usher. Why? Because it's going to the Makabel. He's the one that's considered the owner. There's an outstanding loan, so you can't do it with the Yisrael. So why by Bechar? Why we say it belongs to a guy? It's not because the guy really owns it. The guy doesn't really own it. But if he would come, he has the koyach to take it. The ilu asi and he wants the money. The and you don't give him the money. Therefore, what does he do? He has a lien on it. He could grab it, right? The Eloi Mishkach Lala Behema, and if he doesn't even find the Behema Tafis Le Vladis, he can take the Vladis, the Vladis Dida, its own kids. Therefore, like it's not pure simple Jewish ownership. There's the guy's lien over here, and therefore the guy comes in between us. Anytime there's a yad of a guy, even though there's not actual ownership, all there is a lien. Still, the guy patters the animal from Bechoros, and because he could take the kids also, so the next generation are also patter. Because the Vladis also, he has a lien on, therefore he could take the next generation.
Why don't we say that the Vlad?
Oh, so it sounds like you don't start from the third generation. It sounds like we hold that he won't take the next generation. He'll only take the first and second.
He wants it. Maybe it's not shliach to go that far down the line.
Right, maybe it's like not the agreement. Maybe it's like that's like regulated. I'm not sure. Yeah. The Gemara is going to actually say there's a sheet that holds you go one more generation. But more than that, not. I mean, maybe what you're saying is maybe Rabbi Shimon Gamliel holds, right? He says Afilu ad asara, lo'ilam, whatever. He says you go forever because the guy could always take. So what's the machlekes? It's machlekes in whether the achrayis is whether the guy could take or not. Right? And that's weird that there's machlekes whether the guy could take or not. So maybe it's like what you're saying. You're saying, Avram's saying that it's not shchiach. Maybe he's telling shchichus. Rashbag holds.
It doesn't explain. It doesn't explain Rashbag. It's not shchiach. Why is he letting it all the way to 10 days?
Maybe the Tanakama holds as long as it's shchiach. If it's not shchiach, you can't. But he holds no, as long as there's a possibility, even if it's not about shchiach. I'm more comfortable saying that's the machlokes than saying machlokes is whether you could take a achrayus or not. Whether the guy could actually go to the fourth generation and take fifth generation, sixth generation. Could he or could he not? What do you mean? What's the machlokes? Right? Okay, not sure. Okay, having the vlad is saying tachsim, saying vlad is p'tur. So the Mishnah said that if you're maimid the vladis, if you actually make an agreement and you say the vlad is like the ima, so you sort of articulate to the guy that the kids, he has a lien on the kids just like he had a lien on the mother, which means it bumps everything another generation, right? That's what the Mishnah said. So Amar Rav Huna says, Vlades are p'turim. In a regular situation, before Hamid, without making any extra stipulations, Vlades are p'turim, Vlades saying chayav. And that's what our gears in the Mishnah is. That's a simple reading of the Mishnah. The Vlades that have Bechor are p'turim, and the Vlades are chayav. Rav Yudah, he reads the Mishnah in a different way. He says, Vlades nami p'turim. No. When it says Vlades are p'turim, don't read b'midai, one generation and two generations. No. It means to say Vlades, it means to say at some point you're chayav, at some point you're pater. At some point you're pater, and then from then on you're chayiv. But he doesn't understand it to be just one generation, two generations. So Yudah Omer Vlades nami p'turim. No, he says no. Vlades are also pater. Vlades. The next generation are chayiv. That's how he reads the Mishnah. The Shittim Kubetzis brings a rush and says that this is the way you even read the Mishnah. Okay. Now the Gemara is going to ask a kasha on Rabbi Yehuda, not from the Reisha, because the Reisha, okay, you can read the Mishnah that way, fine. But the Sefer that says He'emid Vlades Tachasim saying that sounds like, right? Vlades P'turin. In that situation, even the Vlades are P'turin. In that situation, it sounds like the Mishnah is articulating that you bump it up another level, and therefore Vlades are P'turin also. So time with the Hamid, it's only if you remind it, if you actually made that agreement. So this is a tiyuf to Rabbi Yehuda, because it really sounds like the Mishnah is saying that regularly Vlades are chayav, and Rabbi Yehuda says Vlades even are p'turin. Rabbi Yehuda says the Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda says like this. He'll read the Mishnah differently. He'll say the Mishnah doesn't mean only if you're maimed it, then the Vlades are p'turin. No, always. This is what the Mishnah is teaching me. Afilu hamid nami. Even if you actually maimed it. Even if you actually maimed and you say the Vlades Satachzim is saying, still the Urche, and therefore Urche David Kachavim the mitvas bina, it makes it more shchiach for the Kachavim to grab the bina. Vahave is still have, they take out the vahave, right? Still have kimid loy hamid Vlades. Therefore, have kimid loy hamid. It's as if you weren't maimed. According to Yehuda, the Mishnah is saying exactly fakert. The fact that you're maimed, it makes no difference. That's what the Mishnah is trying to tell you. It's trying to tell you that even when you're maimed it, don't think you bump up another generation. No, it still maintains its original din that the Vlades are pater, Vlades are chayev. Right? The fact that you were maimed it doesn't make it any better. Have kimid loy hamid. It's not going to change anything, and Vlades are p'turin, and Vlades are chayav. Right, so it comes down mamish punkt vaker. According to Rabbi Huna, Hamid is saying we bump another generation. According to Yehuda, no, it was always bumped up to that generation, and the Mishnah is trying to say that even if you remind it, it still maintains its still thing. The guy will not take for that next generation. Okay, Tanan, Reb Shimon Gamliel Omer. We have in the Mishnah it says afilu adasar daris, even 10 daris, p'turin. He holds your pater for 10 daris. Shachar Yisrael Kerem, the guy could always come and take it. Says the Gemara, Shlomo Rabbi Yehuda. It makes sense, according to Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Nochish Tanakama L'Dari, that Tanakama is discussing generations. It's not just saying one generation is pater, right? According to us, according to Rabbi Huna, it's just one generation that's pater, not and two generations are already chayav, right? So according to Rabbi Yehuda, that says Tanakama is Nochisadar, which he holds not just one generation, even two generations are pater, right? So once you're already talking about multiple generations, that's why it makes sense. Rashbag says Adasar Adaris, right? He's trying to say you say 2, no, till 10. But El Rav Huna Damar Nochis Tanakama Ladar, according to Rav Huna, that says we're only talking about one generation over here, right? Maya Filo Adasar Adaris, right? Why do you have to say Adasar Adaris? Just say no even further. Adasara, it sounds like you're already discussing a number and you're going and you're saying no even till 10. So it says the Gemara, no. Amlach Rav Huna, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel Ahamid Kai. He's not talking about the regular case. He's talking about by Hamid, and by Hamid, he says if you make this agreement with the guy, then it goes on till 10 generations. Only if you said the Vlades Shatachasim was saying in that situation, that's when it extends till 10 generations, and in that situation. The Tanakama was Nochis L'Dari, right? Ahamid Kai, the Nochis the Tanakama does agree that it's 2 generations, and that's why it makes sense for Reb Shimon to contrast and say no, even 10 generations. Okay, Tashema, we have a brayso. Sam Kabel Tzon Barzam Rechavim, Vlades P'tur and Vlades Loy. Right? See, the Vlades are pater, but Vlades not. To use with Rabbi Yehuda, it sounds like Dafka the Vlades. Rabbi Yehuda, Ema Hein of Vlades say. No, you should read it Vlades say Hen. Hein of Vlades say Hen, which means. It sounds like one more generation. It's not just one generation. Or you could read it to mean more generations. Some say the Brayso is the opposite. Hein of Lodei Sayin Pturin. To Yusuf Rav Huna, that sounds like it's trying to be marb another generation. It's a question of Rav Huna says it's only one generation. Rav Huna, Eima Hein of Lodis. No, read in Hein of Lodis, Pater. Vlad of Lodis, Chayav. And the next generation is Chayav. Okay.